I was asked to give you my reflections on the question of religion. I think we all agree that religion, which is the word for bringing people together, should be a means of bringing all people together in the name of God, for creating justice and for creating balance and promoting justice and love and compassion among the humankind. So perhaps we can all agree that religion, any religion, should be a cause of love and affection among us as humans. If the result is the opposite, if it brings death and destruction and intolerance to whoever thinks differently from us, therefore that is no religion. It is our human obligation. It is our moral obligation. It is our spiritual obligation to leave that kind of religion, because we are better off without any religion if religion that we follow is a pathway to hatred and destruction and absence of love and compassion, which is really the reason for religion in the first place. Some believe that we can do without religion. This subject is a detailed subject, and I'm not going to belabor on that at all. It seems to me that if your way of life, whatever that is, leads to a compassionate life, a loving life and existence with all creatures on earth, and if you contribute to health of society in any way and shape and form, obviously your religion is an effective religion. And therefore, to me, religion is necessary because it connects us to the source. And some may ask, what is that source? That source, for those of us who follow a pathway of God, pathway of religion, is connecting to God, connecting to Master of Existence. And for those who do not like to follow the pathway to what we call God, I suggest you call it goodness. You call it energy, it doesn't matter. As long as you follow a pathway which leads to compassion and justice and kindness and love and humility and kindness among the human race, that is the path that we should be thankful for. You asked the question, what is my understanding of life after death? Well, you reach a point in your life when you totally accept the manifestations of God, whether you call it Jesus or Baha'i or all those in between, before them or in the middle. From the Baha'i perspective, that aspect doesn't matter because they're all one. We call them all manifestations of God. We believe that all religions are chapters of the same book. And in the words of Baha'u'llah, this is the faith of God, eternal in the past, eternal in the future. So, you come to a point of accepting. That accepting is through understanding their sacrifice, understanding their message, understanding that they were, in one way, they were mortal human beings, but their message was universal. Their message was so deep that it touched the heart and soul of millions and millions of people across the globe. So at that point you come to a point of acceptance. And you come to the point of submission, which means that you say that with humility I accept. With humility I believe. So at that point, there are things that for mortal human beings are not provable per se, like other things in science, like that this is a tree, and this is the way it grows. This is a human being. This is how we are nurtured. This is how we avoid disease, and this and that. It's not like that. So then, when they tell you that there is life beyond this life, that there is a creator beyond us, that there is an order within which we submit and we function, then you accept. Among those teachings, of course, is the teaching of life after death. All manifestations of God, in one way or another, teach us about a life that will be here after we pass away. Of course, our body disintegrates. We are mortals, and our body we come from dust and returns to dust. But it's our soul that begins on a journey toward God. And that journey toward God is the journey of the soul. And from what the manifestations of God tell us, is that journey depends on how we have lived our lives, and how at the point of death we confess to our shortcomings, to ask forgiveness, and also submit to the greatness of God and His manifestations. And we walk on that path, we walk on that journey forever, and to get closer and closer to God. In the words of Baha'u'llah, heaven is being close to God, which means, from what we understand, being close to these virtues and virtuous living. And death is basically being away from it. So the distance, or in other words, the question of light and darkness. God is light, heaven is light, and hell is darkness. In previous religions, there are passages, parables with regard to heaven and that beauty and rivers and milk and honey and this and that, and hell, the place of fire and damnation and inferno and this and that. And this is according to our understanding, this was for a man of 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, where imagery and giving them some symbolic terms as to what heaven and hell is was described. So according to Baha'u'llah, heaven is being close to God and hell is being away from God, and this journey does not end with our journey on this earth and will be everlasting. You asked the question that if I'm not here, if my body disintegrates, then what does this whole thing mean of our soul journey? Well, human being, the being part is our soul. This body is temporary and disintegrates. It's nothing compared to that important part of us. It's nothing. So therefore, it is that soul that remains. And also, when we say that God is embodiment of virtue, and the beauty of the soul, that part of it that we understand, is the embodiment of these virtues, which is goodness and compassion and justice and kindness and gentility and detachment, and all these virtues that we read about, and sanctification. So that sanctification is sanctification of the soul. For the body aspect of it, of course, we take a bath every day, we try to purify the body, but that is symbolic, so that then as I walk on this path, I'm helpful to my neighbor. I honor my parents. I respect those with whom I come into contact, and so on and so forth. And that aspect of it is our soul. The body is just a vehicle, a temporary vehicle for us while we're here. But that aspect of it, of course, is eternal. Does not go away. Of course, all of this thing is still imagery for the man of today. Maybe 1,000 years from now, when the next manifestation comes, we will have reached a deeper and a higher level of understanding, and explanations would be even more elucidate, more clear. But for now, what Baha'u'llah tells us with regard to God, with regard to a sanctified soul, is all of these virtues, what we consider as goodness and beauty. My understanding is that when we pass on, our relationship would be all spiritual. My understanding is that all of us, even the worst among us, are still children of the same God. In the Baha'i writings, the role of evil is downplayed, which means that Baha'u'llah considers all of us as human beings as noble. He says, "Noble have I created thee, and thou hast abased thyself. Rise then for that for which thou wert created." So he considers all of us noble. Of course, we are all fallible, we all make mistakes, but there's always, he has provided a way. That's all manifestations of God have provided a way for repentance and thus forgiveness and rising above it all. But at the same time, the manifestations of God tell us that He's a just God, and there are things that may not be forgivable in His sight. If we purposely, continuously commit crimes and do injustice against all, we're all His children. But then we have abased ourselves. I don't know how the process is, but obviously we have to pay. There's retribution. You know, that justice requires reward and punishment. So that those like Hitler and all those criminals that we see across the globe, particularly in the Middle East these days, that commit so much crimes against humanity, there has to be justice at some point. And therefore, we don't keep any grudge against them as individuals. We wish the best for them, including for them, including for the worst among us. We wish that God would do as He willeth, and we wish God would provide the way and the means for the rehabilitation, so that they join the civilized world and work toward world peace and world understanding. And it seems, my understanding at this point is that from what I see from the holy writings, is that these relationships will continue. We will come to meet our parents, we'll come to meet our children, we'll come to meet our acquaintances, of course in the world of soul, in the world of spirit. And that as we purify ourselves, this relationship as well becomes more purified, more gentle, more loving. It's just like a life-giving breeze. You know, in a garden of flowers with wonderful aroma. So that's again imagery. But this is how we envision it as compared to a situation of misunderstanding and strife and backbiting and the lower nature of man. Now, if any of that lower nature has remained, of course, this is where rehabilitation is necessary. And that's perhaps where Baha'u'llah explains in the Seven Valleys that it may take hundreds of thousands of years for some to understand the higher nature. And that is in effect that suffering that we all go through. We go through it here until we become rehabilitated. The same way in the other world, that rehabilitation will continue until we become more purified. It's just like the waves, you know, or the storm, and these clashes is sort of that purification process, which is difficult, which is troublesome, which is painful, which could be painful at times. But then that is necessary until we are worthy to meet the beloved. So in other words, those who have passed on and those who have lived the life, or they have been able to rehabilitate themselves and their souls, they are with us, and they see us, and sometimes they guide us, and if we also succeed in self-purification, we can also intercede in our prayers to God for them, and for forgiveness of their sins as well. So we ask for own forgiveness as well as those whom we have associated with, whom we like to intercede. So this for grace of God. The question of what I know and what I've read and where I am in the larger context is totally secondary. What is important is, as Baha'u'llah says, my first counsel is this: possess a pure, kindly, and radiant heart. Do I have a pure heart? Do I have good intentions? That is first and foremost. Through the history of religion, Peter, Paul, from Christianity, and in the history of Buddhism and Islam and Judaism and Baha'i faith, there have been hundreds of people who have not had any knowledge whatsoever, but first and foremost they are pure. They had purity of the heart. And then if your heart is pure, if your soul is sanctified, if you are not worldly and you're detached and pure, God provides the best assistance. And God provides the best help. So that's why that is important. Of course, all of us, as we're growing up, there are parents, there are teachers, there's school, there's church, there's synagogue, and we, in our training process, we get help from others. But what is significant in this day and age is that first and foremost, we purify ourselves and we count on God and God alone to help us. We can get assistance from this fellow or that fellow. But first and foremost, am I a purified, sanctified child of God? And that is the cornerstone. Beyond that, we can find all the truth that is necessary. How can we have a pure heart? How can we have a pure heart? It is through, first I should want it. I should pray about it. I should ask God for assistance. I should be humble. I should be detached from worldly attachments. With all that and pure intentions. And what I indicate to you in the previous segment is my desire to help everybody and ask nothing in return, particularly those in need. If I reach that point, I have a pure heart and God will help me. So anything that we do for others is first and foremost comes back to us. And so this should be the path. This should be the pathway of all those who say, I believe. What is the use of believing without acting? That has also been said by Jesus and Buddha and Baha'u'llah. That believing alone is not adequate. We have to abide by these laws. And first and foremost law, according to Baha'u'llah, is that purity of the heart that we need to work for.
I'd like to say a few words regarding morality and schools. It seems that for the most part, most parts of the globe, or perhaps all across the globe. When we think about school and sending our kids to school, it is for teaching them mathematics, history, literature, alphabets, the foundation of languages, and so on and so forth. We seldom think about moral issues. A friend of mine, when I was going to college, over 5 decades ago, in New York, her name is Linda Kavalin Popoff. She, years later, she wrote a book, and she began on a project which was called the Virtuous Project. And what she has done, she has collected the thoughts from all religions of the world: Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Baha'i faith, and so on. And she has collected it into what's called the Book of Virtues. And then what she did with this is that she took this project all over the globe, many countries in Europe and Asia and Africa and South America, and then went directly to the Ministry of Education and suggested to them to get this package from her and use it as part of their curriculum. So from what I understand, over 50 different countries all across the globe have accepted this as part of their curriculum. Just imagine how much helpful a project like this could be. For one thing, as children going to school, they hear the name of all these prophets, messengers, or manifestations of God, and scholars and writers and philosophers from all across the planet, from Socrates to Rumi and Gandhi and many others. And then from all these different perspectives, they understand what they have said, what their thoughts were about these issues on the question of virtue and morality. And then the teacher can, together with the students, they can talk about these issues every day. I remember that I saw her in a conference, and she gave me this card, which is basically the heading of the chapters that she has in this book. So what I'd like to do is just give you the heading of her chapters from the scriptures of the world and from the poets and philosophers of the world. Different perspectives on these questions, and see how beautiful it is and how much helpful it can be for our future, for the future of our children, for the future of the planet, in bringing people together. So I hope that people like Oprah Winfrey and United Nations take hold of this and run with it, and including Bill Gates, by the way. The topics for these chapters are these: assertiveness, caring, cleanliness, commitment, compassion, confidence, consideration, cooperation, courage, creativity, detachment, determination, diligence, enthusiasm, excellence, flexibility, forgiveness, friendliness, generosity, gentleness, helpfulness, honesty, honor, humility, idealism, integrity, joyfulness, justice, kindness, love, loyalty, moderation, modesty, orderliness, patience, peacefulness, perseverance, purposefulness, reliability, respect, responsibility, self-discipline, service, tact,
thankfulness, tolerance, trust, trustworthiness, truthfulness, understanding, unity. Is that beautiful? Isn't this the essence of religion, of any and all religions and paths of life all across the planet? So I hope that you help me and help Linda promote this beautiful vision for our planet until there is peace on earth as it is in heaven. Thank you. I'd like to say a few words regarding gender equality in the Baha'i faith. From what I hear and read, women probably had even more rights thousands of years ago before the advent of religion. But since about 4,000 years ago, and with the advent of religion, more or less men were dominant. And in that sense, in all the past religions, except the Baha'i faith, it appears, that women were not considered equal to men. And it was always promoted that women should be subjugated or under the protection of men. And in some areas it's even spelled out that men's rights is twice the rights of women, and so on. But it is emphasized in the Baha'i faith that men and women should be considered completely equal. They should be considered as two wings of the same bird, and that if one wing is weaker, the bird, which is humanity, cannot fly. And that unless and until women's rights are upheld and promoted and practiced, that would be an impediment to world peace. And it is our obligation for human rights and for world peace to work on the pathway of equality between men and women. But that does not mean that men and women should have the same function. In the Baha'i writings, it's emphasized that if a family does not have enough money and can send one of the two children, one boy, one girl, to school, it is the obligation of the parents to send the girl to school, because girl becomes mother and her training is more important than training of a man, training of the boy. So it is just to show the importance of equality of men and women and their training. However, again, that does not mean that they have the same functions. Some people have objected that, for example, that Baha'i women are not allowed to serve on the Universal House of Justice. Well, it should be emphasized that Baha'i women are in all positions and all functions, whether it is on a local level, national level, or international level, they are involved in all the affairs of the faith and in all the affairs of their household. And through the history of the faith, we have had only one very significant, important position, which was granted to them by Baha'u'llah, the manifestation of God himself, and Abdul Baha, his eldest son, an interpreter of Baha'i writings, and Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the faith. They were allowed to designate certain individuals, some 50 people, as hands of the cause. And many of these hands of the cause were women, such as Dorothy Baker, Clara Don, Martha Root, and a number of others. And at this time, many women and men are given the designation of counselor. And the job of those hands of the cause and counselors is basically protection and propagation of the Baha'i faith. They are both men and women. The function of universal justice is assigned to men, and Baha'u'llah says that the logic of it would be understood by humanity at a later time. And as we believe in Baha'u'llah as the prophet founder of the faith and as the manifestation of God for this age, we accept his word and we submit to him, believing that does not mean inequality. Men and women are considered completely equal in the face of God and in the Baha'i faith. Thank you.
It's a good day that we have together. We talk about so many different things, and we thought about these successful, wonderful people that are in our planet, such as Oprah Winfrey and Bill Gates and Wynne Dyers and a few others. And I really am happy for their success and for the good work that they have done and they continue to do. But I always wonder, is it they who are doing it, or is this another force which guides them to do it, or is it a combination? And I wish them happiness and more success. But what it seems to me is that it's only people like Rumi and Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela and Abdul Baha and those who truly follow their path, and maybe these people as well, if they follow their path, that whatever they do, they come to the realization that it is not really they who are doing it. It is the will of God and the will of manifestation of God. And then they have really purified themselves and put themselves in a position that they say that, this is his voice and I'm just a conduit and I want to share it with you. If these wonderful people are sharing it in that spirit, their effect is universal and would be for eternity. But whenever we think that this is me who is doing it, I'm successful because I'm such an important person, then no matter what the level of success is, that success is temporary and it won't last forever. Do you agree?
Sure.
So that's what I think is very important, because the human ego and human pride is such that it becomes a barrier, and that barrier is such that no matter how much we have achieved, we lose it. When we think that it is me who is doing it, we just lose it. But when we realize that it is the higher voice, it is his voice, and I'm just a conduit that allows me to share these words with my brothers and sisters, then that becomes an eternal voice. That becomes a universal, lasting voice, and that is the difference. So I wish all these successful people to have this thought in their mind and their thoughts in order to make their voice universal and everlasting.
So what's your suggestion to famous people, successful people like Dr. Wynne Dyer or Oprah or others?
Well, if I can say a suggestion, it is just a voice that tells me that I'm so grateful for having these people in the universe. But I'm saying that voice tells me that this voice, that they're conduit for it, is from him and is not from them. And they should in turn be grateful for the opportunity that God has given them in order to guide and be helpful to the human race.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The other question that I'd like to raise is the question of United Nations. I'm first to acknowledge that since United Nations was formed after World War II, obviously we have not had a World War III, but still pockets of resistance and problems and massacres, genocide, and wars in different forms and shapes continue on the planet. From Korea to Vietnam to Iran-Iraq war Iraq-Kuwait war, the massacres that is happening by ISIS and others in Syria, or the brutalities by the regime in Iran and all the other places of the world, including Sudan and Rwanda, continue. And obviously then, United Nations has faced and is facing serious challenges and problems on the question of wars, on the question of genocide, on poverty, on absence of adequate health care, universal health care, and education, and economic justice, and the like. It is my hope that these questions, through the efforts of committed countries as well as committed individuals, and those that the United Nations invite to share thoughts, will continue more aggressively until the time comes that we can say these problems are essentially solved and we have peace on earth. A related question to the question of the United Nations is the effectiveness of International Court of Criminal Justice. So many crimes are committed now by individuals as well as countries who rule through dictatorship and force and try to crush any voice of opposition, any voice of reason, crush any kind of dialogue that could happen. And I hope that through the efforts of the United Nations and through the efforts of all good people on earth, that these problems are addressed, and the time comes that the criminals are put in jail, not so much for punishment, but more than punishment, for the rehabilitation, because I'm sure that these people who, in the name of God and religion, are committing so many crimes, have caused so much death and destruction in the world, are also suffering themselves. So therefore, more than punishment, it is a question of rehabilitation that should happen. It has gone on for too many centuries, particularly in the past 30, 40 years, that we see basically people who have caused terror for a large region of the globe. They have continued to do their crimes against humanity. There must be a way, there must be a system to be able to deal with these crimes at this point of human progress. I'd like to address two very important and philanthropic individuals, Mr. Bill Gates and Mrs. Oprah Winfrey. I know that you have done so much good on earth and continue to do good on earth. But my reflection is on this question, that it is good to give people computers, it is good to work for humanity's welfare and healthcare and food and housing and all the other good things that you and many other, or I should say a few other good people on earth like yourself who have the means do it. But what I'd like to address is that how can we alleviate poverty altogether? Is it possible to alleviate poverty altogether? Is it possible to have global education? Is it possible to alleviate the extremes of wealth and poverty in the world? Is it possible to deal with the question of prejudice, superstitions, unfounded dogmas on a national and global level, so that in the near future the world that we live in will become a more peaceful and pleasant place for all of us as human beings? So I'd like you to think about these issues, and if I can be of any help, please call on me. I don't have much wealth and perhaps not even much intelligence, but I have a good heart, like many other people who have good hearts. But I'm also willing and able to be vocal and to rise up to the occasion and help in any way possible. The question I was asked, what do you think of the future of humanity and planet Earth? Well, from all we see, the short-term future is bleak. Wars and destruction and religious and national and racial and gender fanaticism and prejudices and superstitions of all kinds is tearing the fabric of humanity apart. But we all live with hope. At the same time that the destructive forces are working, the constructive forces are also working in all of us. In the words of Baha'u'llah, in man, in humanity, in all of us, there are two natures. His spiritual or high nature and his material or lower nature. In one he approaches God, and in the other he lives for the world alone. It is our hope and the hope of all good people on planet Earth for us to be able to elevate and rise higher and higher to what we were really born for, to do good on earth as it is in heaven. And if we all bond together, that goodness is with us, within us, and that ultimate glory will happen, and there'll be peace on earth as it is in heaven. Okay, one of the friends asked me to share with you a few thoughts with regard to the benefits of old age. And that's an area that is part of my expertise because I'm an old man. So I thought that first and foremost, you don't pay into Social Security, you draw from Social Security. So that is number one advantage. And then the other advantage is that you don't have a job and you're not looking for a job and you're not looking for a raise and you're not looking for approval of your boss in any shape or form. You're not going to school anymore. You are still a student, you're still learning, because we learn until the last day of our lives. But then you don't need to worry about grades, about competing with this student, that student, writing this paper and that paper, and those kind of research papers, even as a professor. You keep writing and coding this fellow and that fellow, and making sure that this is their idea, and so on and forth. So at this point in time, all of that is done and over with. And now, on top of all these things, you begin losing your memory. But even that has a little advantage, has a lot of advantages actually, because you don't remember who hurt you, why they hurt you, and therefore that brings you more in line with the way you should be, which means you don't judge anybody, you don't get offended, you don't get hurt, and you live your life for the rest of your life. And then on top of all these things, you start thinking about life after death. And what that means, you really need more seriously, you start accounting for your deeds and misdeeds. And then hopefully, from now on, which means for these few remaining days, you will have less and less misdeeds, and you'll have more and more deeds, so that when you go to him, you have something good on your resume to show. Thank you very much, and have a good life.